This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have coming in from Berlin, Germany, Joel Dietz. He's started up a company, or I think he started it up. He's involved with a company called Swarm. It's the world's first crypto equity platform, and we're going to be talking a lot about what he's doing because I find it very interesting. Basically, what a lot of people call it is Bitcoin 2.0, and it's essentially building off of the blockchain technology that Bitcoin came out with and making all kinds of innovative technologies that can really change big parts of the world, including legal and corporate structures and all kinds of things. And I'm sure Joel knows a lot more about it than me, and so I'll be learning along with you. But the first question I always have to ask everyone, Joel, is how did you become an anarchist?
Well, I studied early Chinese philosophy as my undergrad, and I was convinced of the sort of Taoist anarchist ideal, where you have these sort of wandering hermits or people who live on the sort of fringes of society who say, really, fuck it, there's a lot of things in society that just don't make any sense, and we don't need to play by society's rules. We can sort of create our own rules. And particularly in the context of something else I'm interested in, yoga or early Taoist practices, I thought this is really the sort of ideal of people, basically who are so enlightened or kind of have a great degree of self-awareness that can go and, organize their societies based on their own principles rather than some sort of external ideal that's forced on them. So I've held this as an ideal for the last decade or so. It doesn't always integrate well with the rest of life, but it's still definitely my conviction.
Yeah, the anarchy, us anarchists, we don't always fit in really well with the way that society is currently structured, but that's because the way society is currently structured is completely fucked up. It's criminal. It's insane. I can't believe that a lot of people still think that's a pretty good way of doing things, is through violence and theft, and they call us the crazy ones because we believe that we should have a world where people don't initiate violence on others, and they think that's crazy, or they think that I don't even know what they think. I'm almost done trying to think about.
The sort of relieving thing about it from my standpoint is they've been thinking the same thing for thousands of years, so it's the same struggle in every generation, and yeah.
That's a good point, and that actually is a great segue into what you're doing, because there's a quote out there, I forget who said it, and I forget the exact quote, as I always do, but the general basis of the quote was, if you want to overthrow current structures in society, you can't do it by changing the old structure. What you do is you create a new structure which makes the old structure obsolete. And that's exactly what Bitcoin is doing. And now, of course, Bitcoin's even moving on into a whole new world, the Bitcoin 2.0 world. Why don't you give people who don't even know what that is a little bit of a basic primer before we get a little bit more detailed into what you're doing?
Yeah, so some people look at Bitcoin as a currency, and that's definitely true. But the sort of more nerdy or whatever kind of hardcore crypto folks, I like to think of it as sort of this distributed application platform, of which the currency is the first application, and we're seeing that kind of solidified, and that kind of allows it to sort of be a fuel for a lot of other types of applications. So we're seeing a lot of kind of second generation things, which can be something like, peer-to-peer betting, peer-to-peer sort of stock markets, peer-to-peer, contracts, smart contracts, sort of CFDs, a lot of traditional financial instruments. And the one that I'm most excited about and see the greatest potential for is crypto equity, where you actually take some kind of concept that exists in the normal world and it doesn't actually work that well in the normal world, partially because of regulations, partially because of antiquated technology, and you say, actually, this can be done much, much better via blockchain technology.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of people excited, especially smart people. And Susanne Tarhowski-Tempelhoff, who we had on Anarchast before, is, I believe, going to Berlin. I don't know if it's just to work with you or what, but I know that she's been talking about this area for a while, and I find it fascinating. I have to admit that it's all fairly new to me. I hadn't even heard about these concepts until a few months ago. But I can see where this is all potentially going, and it's incredibly exciting. And for people watching, if you don't understand anything that Joel Joel said up until now about what he's been talking about, start to look into, first of all, Bitcoin, and then from there you'll start to understand the applications that could possibly come out of blockchain type technology or a basis. And it's unbelievable what it could potentially do. It could change the entire world. And Joel mentioned just a few areas: gambling, stock markets, corporations. And you probably saw this, Joel, in I think it was the UK Guardian just a couple of days ago, was an article about Crypto-Anarchy, which really outlined some of the potential future uses of this technology. Did you see that article?
Yeah, I did. And, there's a lot of people who are getting scared, when they see this sort of stuff as it's developing for a variety of reasons. One of them is that Bitcoin wasn't totally anonymous, and these next generation of technologies, that nothing that I've really talked about or anything that we're doing, but some of them really do have very deep, secure anonymity associated with them. So there's a lot of things that, are going to be enabled by this stuff that were never possible before, and a lot of those things, scare governments. So.
Yeah, well, good. Government should be scared. Government should, at the very least, be scared of its own citizens, not the other way around, which is the way it's been quite a bit lately. And but this article I found just amazing, because not only was it talking about anarchy, not only was it talking about Bitcoin 2.0 type applications, and it was in the UK Guardian, which is a fairly regular newspaper, although it is one of the better ones that I've seen, with people like Glenn Greenwald coming out of there. So it's definitely one of the better newspapers in the world that I've seen. But still, to have that in a fairly mainstream newspaper, these sort of concepts, I thought that's amazing how quickly this is all catching on. And I think part of I was around during the start of the internet, and it was a little slow to get going because we didn't already have the internet. So a lot of people were excited about it, but they had no way to talk about it or find ways to find people who are doing things and get connected. But now we've had the internet for about 20 years, and it's now we're all connected, and now we have this new technology coming on stream, and it's just going so quickly. And I'm sure you can comment on how quickly this whole space is moving.
Yeah, I mean, just even before this happened, you had this crowdfunding, right? I mean, if you look at the global VC investment at something like $30 billion a year, crowdfunding has gone from nothing a couple of years ago to $5 billion. It's increasing, at 50% a year or something like that. And with this kind of next generation technology, I mean, you really see a lot of these traditional kind of ways of investing and sort of power structures potentially just, becoming obsolete. And there's a sort of vested elite that's attached to a lot of these obsolete power structures. So I think they're probably gearing up right now and saying, we're not going to go down without a fight. And, there's people who are really smart on the other side of this.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. This is a real revolution going on, and a lot of people still don't even realize what's going on. And for people like us who are paying attention, it's amazing to see all this innovation happening and how it is essentially unstoppable, unless they really want to turn off all the power grids. They might even go that far. Who knows? But even then, there's still probably ways around these things. They're looking at all sorts of ways to stop what this revolution is doing, but they're way behind the curve. Government usually is. You just have to look at healthcare.gov to see how good the regular government IT department is, and they have no idea how to deal with this stuff, and they're just so far behind, and we're winning, and it's going to be fascinating to watch over the next few years. It's going to be almost like being at the start of the internet or being at the start of the Industrial Revolution as another example, and just seeing how this all develops.
I think it is, as powerful as the Industrial Revolution, what's going to happen. Because the internet was like the first thing where it opened up these communication channels, but, it never, like, finance was a sort of other category where they had this, like, wall, and they just keep building this bigger and deeper wall around what they're doing. And it's totally illegitimate. It's siphoning all these resources from the rest of, like, hardworking Americans or people around the world that actually work for a living. And then, they just keep going. So but then, there's this disruptive innovation now that's happening that they can't do anything about. So, and it's kind of bursting out the seams all around them, and they built this kind of wall, but now it's like kind of coming underneath, like, in the, like, tunnels and catacombs or something like that. and everyone's like popping up out of like a little like sewer and like, oh, what's that? Is that a rat? It's not a rat. It's a revolutionary. But they haven't quite figured that out yet. But they will soon. So and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. And on top of the fact that this revolution is happening, is that the old power structures and the old structures of just central banking and governments and states and the way that everything was set up, the legal system, courts, all these sort of things, jails, which are heinous, they were all dying already. And then all of a sudden, all these new things are coming on board. So we're seeing it's almost like a perfect tsunami or a perfect storm of things happening with the old systems already in a state of collapse. The dollar is going to collapse. The banking system's in a state of collapse. And then we have all these new things rushing in right now. And so it's exciting times, and you're right at the heart of it. Why don't you tell us more specifically or more into detail on what exactly Swarm does?
So Swarm is the first crypto equity platform, and our vision is to see these sort of full on the blockchain kind of companies or whatever corporations come around. Some people call these distributed autonomous corporations or something like that, but where they're really a little bit insulated from the rest of things that are going on, and have the ability to allow kind of collective ownership of things. So basically removing a lot of the friction that's traditionally associated with investment, including some of the onerous and kind of difficult regulatory things. So the U.S. is still not allowed crowd equity funding, and they keep delaying when that's going to actually take effect and how it's going to take effect, but at the same time, there's just this amazing capability, like we're talking about, in these sort of technological solutions to say, hey, look, I'm creating an app, and I can just create some coins for this app, and then instead of, and sort of as a fundraising mechanism, I'll sell a bunch of these coins to my friends, and then when the project is successful, those coins will go up in value, and maybe they're redeemable for something later on, or they kind of actually can even have like sort of voting rights or other things, or a distribution of the future profit of a project, much like you would see in a kind of normal sort of stock scenario. So it really is the kind of like thing that in some ways there's like traditional equity that has a particular role, and this is like a stock, and then there's sort of like a Kickstarter model where you just put it in as a donation, and we're like creating something that is really totally new. I mean, it's sort of like Kickstarter, and then it has a lot of ease of use. It's really easy to get access. Anyone can do it, but it's sort of like equity in that, it actually produces a kind of value that, potentially can increase if the project is successful. And it's on a completely decentralized distributed exchange. I mean, it's very, very cool.
Yeah, it is very cool, and it's going to be very interesting to see as these things develop, what sort of innovations come into the market, how people use them. I'll be very curious to watch as these things start to roll out. And I know Swarm, I think, is launching. I think I heard June 17th.
Yeah, we're having a big launch party on the 16th in Berlin. And then when the clock hits midnight, then that's when we'll open up the general fundraiser. So
you're raising funds for Swarm on June 17th.
Exactly. So we have our own coin. It's like its own token, and it's the first token where when you get it, so say you exchange your bitcoins or something for this on June 17th, then you would get a Swarm coin, and that's going to generate more coins. So for every like coin launch that we do via Swarm, you get some of those coins back, which is, I don't know, no one's like really done this before, but it's really cool. So like say the next thing, maybe Lava Bet, you guys probably know, or like these other kind of different kinds of email or whatever, just decentralized apps, and they all have kind of tokens associated with it, and you're constantly getting them back in your wallet just because they're done through the Swarm network. And the other really cool thing about that is it creates this interesting incentivization thing where, because you know about these other projects and you have a sort of personal stake in them, you become a kind of early user and enthusiast for them. So from a product launch standpoint, it's like you get a whole bunch of really enthusiastic users who are passionate about sort of decentralized systems from the very beginning. So
yeah, it's very, very interesting. One thing I've kind of learned in life, I'm 43 years old now, and I've kind of learned that you kind of what I try to do is get to know really smart people who have really done really interesting things and really done them. And then when they tell you something that they're really into, you pay attention. As opposed to like your uncle who always has some idea, he never does it. It's usually a weird sounding idea and it never works out. You just get those people out of your life because, come back once you do something that, is successful, and then maybe I'll listen to you. I only have so much time every day. But Suzanne Tarhowski-Tempelhoff, who's done a lot of interesting stuff, and if anyone hasn't seen the Anarchast with her, we'll try to put a link down to it down below. She's flown into war zones and become like an anarcho-capitalist entrepreneur in these war zones and made a lot of money doing it. She seems to just gravitate to really interesting places and do interesting, very creative sort of businesses. And so she told me she's going over there. When you told me that the launch party is on June 16th, now I understand a bit more why she's in a rush to get over there. She does enjoy parties a little bit, but I think she's also going to be staying for about 3 months. So when she told me about you and Swarm, I thought I better have you on because she's usually on to really interesting things. And so I wanted to have you on for that reason. So we'll definitely get this Anarchast up and be watching your launch. If you want to say anything else about what you're doing, please do, and as well let people know your website or where people can find out more information.
Yeah, great. So we're building up this sort of global network of people who are dedicated to the swarm and this sort of idea of collective intelligence from decentralized networks. So we're excited to have anyone who's interested in this join us. Website is swarmcorp.com, and the Facebook and Twitter and every other thing we have the same.
Great. And it's interesting. I started Anarchast about 3 years ago, and one of the old questions is how old 3 years ago was a lot of anarchists were like, well, I live, in a really communist sort of fascistic police state country like the U.S. and it's really hard to get ahead with all the rules and regulations and taxes. And it was a lot of fairly downtrodden sort of anarchists back then. That's 3 years ago. And now since Bitcoin's really taken off, and now there's all these other things, including Ethereum and all kinds of things, MadeSafe, which is really interesting. I'd like to have those guys on if they're anarchists. Now we're mostly talking about these massive opportunities that anarcho-capitalists have out there in the world. Absolutely massive. These are billion-dollar sort of sectors that are going to be created in the next couple of years. And so it's really exciting to me to get people into these things and make them aware of it. And so for all the people watching this, if you don't know about this stuff, like I said, start to get educated because this is where it's all going. I can just see it happening. I'm seeing it in the Bitcoin space, and I'm seeing it all through all these technologies. These decentralized technologies are going to be the way of the future, and you really have an opportunity to get into them now. So check out Swarm, and I'd like to thank Joel coming in from Berlin. And I hear actually, let me ask you one last question. I just thought about that. In Berlin, I hear there's quite a Bitcoin community. Is that true?
Yeah, it's very active. We have a lot of places where you can spend your Bitcoin, and one really cool thing is that June 17th is actually the anniversary of the uprising against communism in '53, when East Germany rose up against that. So it's kind of maybe time again to have something.
Yeah, it's time to have a new uprising against the new communism that's all around the world called statism. And yeah, that's great. So check it out. If you're, a lot of people are gravitating to Berlin, so you might want to check it out. I think we're going to try to have a TDV group there. If people don't know about that, that's groups of mostly anarchists around the world who are doing really interesting things, and you can get connected into all these groups. Just go to dollarvigilante.com. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you get access to all the groups. And yeah, that's it. And I actually might be over in Berlin in August. So if I am, I'll check you guys out, and I wish you the best of luck. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
This is Anarchast.